Hello class, today we're going to talk about chapter 30, the ultimate instrument, Haydn and the symphony. Last chapter, in chapter 29, we talked about chamber music in the classical area, especially with Haydn's string quartet. Now with the symphony, we call this the ultimate instrument because this is where the greatest expressive potential was in the classical music. The music, the genre itself was the most versatile, and this is the most powerful resource of Western tradition. Now, in the early history of the symphony, the roots for this genre start with the Italian opera, especially in the overture. Remember, the overture is the introductory music for the whole opera, where there are snippets of various themes that occur later on in the opera. Now, this is the instrumental music before the actual opera begins, and so the symphony grew out of this overture. Now, this piece of music is usually a fast, slow, fast piece, and these eventually, the fast, slow, fast sections became separate movements. In the German symphonies, they added effects and expanded the genre. One of these effects is called the rocket theme. It's very aggressive and rhythmic, and there's a quick rise in the notes from the low register to the high register. Also, we have a streamroller effect, where we have this drawn out crescendo. Now remember, crescendo is where the music gets louder over time. So you're starting soft and growing. So that streamroller effect, the crescendo is drawn out. And we also have added the minuet, which is a dance movement. The second movement itself is usually a theme and variations. And the theme, the first part, is usually an andante. Remember, a walking tempo, or adagio, slow tempo. And then we have, in this section, we have a lyrical, songful melody, something that could be singable. All right, now for the form, we could have the theme and variations, or sometimes the form could be in a ternary form, where we have an A, B, A form. So sometimes that replaces the theme and variations. Now, for the theme and variations, the theme itself is clearly stated, and it's followed by variations. So the theme could be a two-part or a three-part idea. Now, the types of variations vary depending on what the composer wants to do, but you could have a melodic variation, where you're adding or omitting certain notes. You could have a harmonic variation, where the chords and the accompaniment have changed. So the background music, the harmony itself could change, or meaning it could be in a different key, or we can have a rhythmic variation, where we change the note lengths or the meter or even the tempo itself. The texture could be enriched with new themes, so you can add new melodies or counter melodies to the existing music. Now, for the classical orchestra and symphony, the orchestra ensemble is now established. We have 4 instrument families: the strings, which are the heart of the orchestra. We have the woodwinds, which provide varying colors, and they're often doubling the strings. In this next picture here, we have the natural horns, which are the horns without valves, and woodwinds, which are seen in this painting of a small orchestra performing in an 18th century Venetian palace. The third family is the brass family, and these instruments usually sustain the harmonies, while the percussion, usually the timpani, has that rhythmic life and vitality of the piece. It's kind of like the heartbeat of the music. Now, in the 18th century orchestra, we usually would have 30 to 40 players, and the size is appropriate for the salon, which is usually where these performances would be held. And there's usually an interchange of themes between the instrument groups. The classical symphony is kind of like chamber music, where we're having conversations, like the string quartet. think of it as the four friends who are having conversations, arguments, laughing, crying together. The same thing could be done with the orchestra with those different instrument families. Now, Haydn's symphony, especially Haydn Symphony number 94, nicknamed the Surprise Symphony, this is another example that we're going to talk about. Now, Haydn composed over 100 symphonies. Remember, he is nicknamed the father of the symphony as well as the string quartet. And he, because of his large output, he established the four movement structure of the symphony. The London symphonies, numbers 93 to 104, these were considered the masterpieces of this genre. And he uses expressive effects, for example, sudden crescendos and accents. So remember, we're getting louder all of a sudden, and then we have these loud bursts that really stick out of the texture, those accents. We also have dramatic dynamic contrast. We have really soft softs to really loud louds, and it really gives the ear some context as well as variety. We also have syncopation. Now remember last class when we talked about syncopation, if we have a melody that's just on the beat, like Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. So you heard both versions. Now if we put it together, it sounds like this. Sounds a little chaotic, but you can hear where the emphasis is on the offbeat. That part that sticks out. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. All right, and then the next expressive technique that Haydn used was daring modulations. Now modulations are the process, the journey from one key to the next. And, you know, sometimes they would be a closely related key, so you barely notice that shift, but sometimes it's a distant key, and it has all these twists and turns, and that was something that was really new to their ears at this time. Now, a surprise symphony is one of Haydn's best-known symphonies, and it's nicknamed that because of the sudden fortissimo chord. Remember, fortissimo is the double F in our dynamics. Right? The extra F as the issimo, so that means very loud. So we have this sudden fortissimo chord in a slow movement. And, you know, this was so that the dozing audience would wake up. It would startle them. And also with this symphony, we have appealing melodies and a masterful treatment of the forms. Here is a picture of Haydn crossing the English Channel on his way to England in 1790. Next, this is the main hall of the Esterházy Palace in Hungary, where the music master Haydn spent his summer months along with the court. And this is in the 18th century. Now remember, the Esterházys were the family that Haydn worked for about 29 years, writing music for all of their events and occasions. All right, so in Listening Guide 20, we have the Haydn Symphony number 94 in G major, nicknamed the Surprise. We're going to take a look at the second movement, and this piece was written in 1792. So the second movement, the slow movement of the symphony genre, is andante. So remember, andante is that walking tempo, like you're walking through the park without any hurry. It's just really relaxed. So this one is a theme and variations form, and the theme has a binary structure. So binary meaning two parts. We have an A section and a B section. And the A section has this folk-like melody, and so it's very rustic in a way. Then we have this pizzicato strings. Now, pizzicato is a technique that the strings use where instead of using the bow on their strings, they're plucking the string with their fingers. And the strings are outlining a triad. So we have a root, third, fifth of whatever the chord is. Now in the B section, this is a disjunct theme. Now remember, disjunct is where the notes in succession aren't stepwise, aren't closely related. They jump all over the place. And this ends in a pianissimo. So we have this fortissimo, and then we have a pianissimo. So one P is soft, two P's is very soft. So in this B section, we end with a pianissimo, and then suddenly we have this loud surprise chord. That's the part that, wakes you up. All right, so we have 4 variations. The first variation, we have counter melodies. The second variation, we have a dramatic shift to a minor key. So we can actually hear that mood shift from that happy, jovial major to a darker minor key. And then the third variation, we have a quick repeated notes. And then the fourth variation, we have a new triplet rhythm with offbeat chords. So triplets are groupings of 3. And if we have, our quarter note like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have our eighth notes, which are twice as fast, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now the triplets, there are 3 groupings of those eighth notes that are supposed to be in the same space as those 2 eighth notes. So if we have our 2 eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, the triplets will be triplet, 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 triplet. If we were to combine regular eighth notes with triplets, so you can hear the difference, 1 and triplet, 1 and triplet. Now, while these triplet rhythms are happening, we're having offbeat chords. So remember, offbeat means kind of like syncopation, but we're not on the downbeat. So if this is our beat, we might have a chord like this. Ba, ba, ba. Like it's going to pop out of the texture. And last, we have a coda, which is our separate ending, and it usually means that we're returning back to the original A section or original main melody, and it ends very quietly. All right, so this is our listening guide 20 breakdown, and our major tonality is C, and then in variation 2 we go to C minor. The texture is largely homophonic, so we have a melody with a accompaniment, and then we also have an occasional counter melody. The rhythm in meter is slow, walking tempo in duple meter, so it's a 2-beat meter. And the theme, binary form with the 4 variations. And that's it for chapter 30. Now we're going to move on to chapter 31.